Shabbat Shalom. This evening, unfortunately, we're going to speak about a subject I'm passionate about, but I don't like to speak about it. I'm passionate about fundamentalism. I don't like fundamentalism. I think fundamentalism is a blight on our society. In all its forms, in every place it exists, be it political fundamentalism or religious fundamentalism or any kind of fundamentalism you choose to define, fundamentalism is among the greatest problems we face as a society. And this evening, the reason I'm particularly pained is because I have to speak out about Jewish fundamentalism. I have been arguing for pretty much my whole rabbinate that the whole concept of Reform and conservative and Orthodox Jews is meaningless. There are really two types of Jews. There are thoughtful, critical, compassionate Jews, and there are fundamentalists. And we shouldn't be defining Jews by whether you keep kosher or wear tefillin or you are shomer Shabbat. You can be a Jew that I deeply respect, that I would engage in dialogue with, that I would pray with and break bread with, if you don't recognize women as rabbis. But if you won't sit next to a woman on a commercial airline because of your Jewish belief, you're a fundamentalist. You can be a Jew, although a Jew with whom I would disagree vehemently, and believe homosexuality is a sin. But if you feel the need to stab those attending a gay pride parade, you're a fundamentalist. You can be a Jew and you can believe that God gave us certain land, but if you feel the need to make an idol out of the land, to kill others because of the land, to commit a chilul Hashem, a disgrace against God's name, because of some pathologically misguided belief, then you are a fundamentalist. And you know what? I don't blame fundamentalists, because fundamentalists are what they are. Fundamentalists live in a world that is utterly intolerant of anyone who disagrees with them. Not only are they utterly intolerant of anyone who disagrees with them, they want to mold the world and everything in it to their way of thinking. There is no room for gays to exist in the world of a fundamentalist. It's not just that they think people shouldn't be gay. It's that they want all gays to go away. They either want to cure people of being gay, or they want to stab people, or they in some other way want to make sure people aren't gay. But they can't tolerate the mere existence in this world of gays. And they're fundamentalists. There are people whose misguided belief is so wrong that they believe Judaism teaches that you can't sit next to a woman on an airplane. It teaches nothing like that. Anywhere, any form of Judaism, in any combination, in any way, from any rabbi in the entire world who mentions that, teaches that, suggests that, gives any justification for that, is wrong. It's not an opinion. It's not, well, my opinion is I can't sit next to a woman on a commercial airliner. you are factually wrong. You are factually wrong. Judaism doesn't teach that. It can be your opinion, but it has nothing to do with Judaism. But the problem is, not that that person holds that belief. The problem is that we allow them to hold those beliefs and get away with it. That's the problem. The rest of us enable fundamentalism. And that's a hard, harsh reality. We've excused fundamentalists for so long with a shrug and the, well, what do you want? They're ultra-Orthodox. That's the way they are. We can't tolerate that anymore. We cannot tolerate that anymore. We've tolerated and encouraged fundamentalists in our midst with our appeasement of a settler movement that has become a cancer on the state of Israel. We've tolerated fundamentalists in our midst by allowing Jewish denominations that really hate Israel, that refuse to participate in any communal observance of the state of Israel or support the state of Israel in any way, to still participate in our community. And we get in bed with fundamentalists on so many issues, not just Jewish fundamentalists. And in doing so, we give sanction to fundamentalists. We give sanction to fundamentalists. I've been making this argument for years and years, and people don't agree with it. But for example, when the Jewish world gets into bed with Christians who support Israel, but who disagree with virtually everything else the Jewish world agrees with, we give sanction to fundamentalists. And when we get in bed with Jewish fundamentalists, for any reason whatsoever, we give them sanction and we give them tacit approval. And so fundamentalists come to believe that they can be part of society, and subtly and slowly, and sometimes without us knowing it, they work against everything we believe for. And then we have what we had this week in the state of Israel, in one of the most appalling weeks I can remember since I've been a Jew. People stabbed at a pride parade. And last night and today, the appalling arson against a family that resulted in the death of an 18-month-old infant and the maiming of most everyone else in the family on the West Bank. They have not yet, at least before I came into services, caught the perpetrators, but there is every indication from the Hebrew on the wall that these were Jewish fundamentalists who did this. How many people had not heard this yet? Well, I beg your pardon. Last night, on the West Bank, a family of Palestinians was burned by a Jewish fundamentalist that resulted in the death of an 18-month-old infant, and the rest of the family has been severely maimed. And the arsonist wrote on the walls in Hebrew that indicates this person had to be Jewish. Some people have translated it as revenge. Others have translated it as avenge. But revenge or avenge what? Avenge a family living there? Really? avenge an 18-month-old infant and her brothers, who will now be burned over 70% of their bodies? How could this be? And yes, everybody condemned it. From Prime Minister Netanyahu to the chief of police to every single person, they condemned it. But we have been tacitly giving refuge to Jewish fundamentalists since Baruch, at least since Baruch Goldstein. At least since Baruch Goldstein killed over 40 people in a mosque in Hebron, Purim, many years ago. The person who assassinated Yigal Amir, Yitzhak Rabin, Jewish fundamentalist. And the problem is that this is a stain on everybody in the Jewish world. This isn't just a stain on fundamentalists, because we haven't kicked these people out of our midst. And because we haven't kicked these people out of our midst, they believe that what they're doing is at least in part okay. By and large, these perpetrators haven't been caught and never are caught, because their communities hide them. And by and large, the police don't make a great effort to find them. And this is a problem. And the solution to this problem will be very complicated and very painful. And they're linked together, and that's what we don't understand. You're probably thinking the guy on the plane has nothing to do with the people in the village, but that's just not true. They're all part of a problem of fundamentalism. And the answer to the guy on the plane, when the answer to the guy on the plane, you're familiar with this, on flights to Israel, there are now men who refuse to sit next to women in a randomly assigned seat on a commercial airliner, not a private jet that's been chartered. And they won't allow the plane to take off until they are accommodated. And rather than kicking them off the plane, they're accommodated. And you know what happens when you accommodate that? The person thinks it's okay. Either when you make a woman move or you accommodate the person by making the person move, that person thinks it's okay. People understand why I can't sit next to a woman on a commercial airliner. That person is a fundamentalist. And you may say, Rabbi, well, that person isn't violent, but you're missing the point. The point is we give sanction to people who think that way. If you are going to live in a complex world made up of people of many faiths, made up of women, then when you buy a ticket on a commercial airplane like El Al, and you get assigned a seat next to a woman, that's your seat. And if you don't like that seat, you get up and you get off the plane. But you don't hold a plane of 400 people flying to Israel and demand that you be seated or your companion or the person next to you is seated. And this is part of a spectrum of fundamentalism that we've given sanction to. And it's not okay. It's the same problem that you're also probably not familiar with, because this has flown under the radar, of consistent vandalism against conservative synagogues in Israel. It's part of the same continuum for years, ever since I've been old enough to understand, that people have said, well, we're not going to worry about civil rights in Israel or religious pluralism in Israel. We're not going to worry about the rights of Reform Jews or conservative Jews in Israel right now. That's not the most important thing, because Israel faces an existential threat. So those issues are interesting, they are important, but they're not the most important issue. And when we solve the larger existential issue, we'll get around to solving the civil rights issues and worrying about people who won't sit next to women on planes. And for all these years, we've been allowing ourselves to give sanctuary and refuge to fundamentalists, and we have emboldened them. And now we're all appalled at what happened, which is appalling. And now we think because the chief rabbi went to visit the victims of the stabbing in the gay pride parade that it's okay. But it's not okay. Because the chief rabbinate is part of the problem in Israel, a fundamentalism that is on the continuum of fundamentalism that resulted in the abomination, in the Chilul Hashem we had last night in the state of Israel. The chief rabbinate of Israel that refuses to allow people to get married according to their conscience. I'm not talking about gays. I'm talking about Reformed Jews. And we've said, this is okay. It's not okay, but it will deal with it because Israel's facing such dangers, we can't be bothered solving the problems of the country inside of civil rights. Okay. We'll eventually solve those problems. But we haven't solved those problems, and we haven't solved the more difficult problems of fundamentalism in the state of Israel and Jewish fundamentalism worldwide. And it's an absolute problem that we need to think about. And if you're interested in really Israel's survival, know this. Israel is losing the public relations war. That may be the harshest reality of all. We don't often talk like this, but how do you think people around the world are looking at Israel today? How do you think people around the world are looking at the state of Israel today? Where a vicious, racist attack on basically an innocent family has resulted in this horror. And it's not, forget that we're not winning the war in Europe, okay. And we're not winning the war in the Arab countries, okay. We're not winning the war among my children, the public relations war. We're not winning the public relations war against young people, young Jews in the United States of America who don't understand how this could happen, who want to defend the state of Israel. But they want to defend a state of Israel that they believe in and that represents something they believe in. Let me tell you some of the problems that need to be dismantled, and you'll see the challenge of whether or not this can really happen. The chief rabbinate of Israel has to go. It has no place in Jewish history. It has no place in Jewish life. There's no basis for the chief rabbinate in any Jewish literature. It is the cause of a great deal of division. It denies people's fundamental rights across the board in the state of Israel. We have to alter the view of the state of Israel toward religious pluralism, because that's a problem. When a rabbi trained in the United States of America has no career path in Israel, something's wrong. Certainly others must see that. If you're a Reform or conservative rabbi trained in the United States of America at one of our long-standing seminaries, and you have no career in Israel, no possibility of a career in Israel, something is wrong. And this is all part of the continuum of fundamentalism that exists in the state of Israel. We also have to change the narrative. We have to understand that so little of what Orthodox Jews, ultra-Orthodox Jews believe has any basis in Judaism. If people want to do it, it's fine. If people want to believe it, it's fine. But many of the things they do have no basis. There's no basis to wear, for example, a shtreimel. You can wear one if you want, but it doesn't make you more Jewish. And that's just a small example of the many various things that they do that are interesting, but they have no basis in Judaism. And we have to change the narrative to make it clear to people that that's the case and that our form of Judaism is as authentic as any other form. We also have to change the preposterous idea that land is an idol. Land isn't an idol. Judaism, if it teaches us anything, teaches us that not even land of Israel is worth dying for. And it's certainly not worth killing for. And we have to change that narrative. Now, let me tell you a few other things we have to change. I hope, I'm sure, there's no one in here at the moment thinking, well, we're not nearly as bad as the Muslims. Because I hear that, I read that. It's all over social media today. Oh, we're not as, okay, it was a bad thing, but we're not as bad as the Muslims. I hope you're reading this. Go home and read it tonight. You have my permission. Okay, we're not as bad. I see it everywhere. Okay, it was a horrible thing. We're not as bad as the Muslims. That is the problem in a nutshell. Anybody who's thinking that, writing that, or believing that is part of the problem. Would you ever teach your child any lesson based on that logic? Well, my son, Ted Bundy, he's not as bad as the other guy. You'd never teach that to your child. You'd never use that as a justification. Why would we use it now? And what does it matter? Is the standard by which we're going to hold ourselves because they're bad? That's going to be how we celebrate the great state of Israel? We're not, there's our motto, not as bad as everyone else. That's going to be our motto. But there are a lot of people who think that. And there are a lot of people out there acting on that. One thing that would help us, and I have been lax on this, and by the way, the problem of appeasing fundamentalist Jews starts with me. Because it's not been an issue I've spoken about enough. And I am, if there's anybody who's guilty, it is people like me who have a pulpit who can get up anytime they want and speak about this issue and haven't done so. And I will tell you that a friend of mine came to me when I first started working at Temple Judea, that first fall. Uri Regev. I've known Uri for many years. He's a great guy. He's a Reform rabbi. He was president of the World Union for Progressive Judaism. Spent a significant amount of time with him. And he was told me he was forming a group called Chidush. It is a group that he was going to form to fight for religious pluralism and against fundamentalism in the state of Israel. And I told him, you know, Uri, I'm new here. It's not the right time for me to be involved with this. I have a lot of other things on my plate. People don't even know me. I'm not going to do this right now. And that was wrong. That was horribly wrong and horribly misguided. And I can only imagine what Uri, with whom I've worked on many different issues, felt when he left my office here in Temple Judea. It's an important issue, I said. It's the right issue. We all support it. I told him exactly what I'm telling you not to say. But we have a building, we have to raise money, we have to do this, people get to know me, I got to speak to different groups. This isn't the right time. Now it's the right time. Now it's the right time. I made a mistake. I should have helped when he came to me, when there were very few people involved, and I should have started with him what he asked my help on. But I didn't. And it was wrong. But this year, one of the projects I'm going to devote myself to is supporting Uri Regev in Chidush. I'm late to the boat now. I'm going to be swimming in some water, but I'm going to do my best because it's been doing good work. It can only do better work. And I am going to suggest and teach that we as a congregation get behind this group because it does good work and it's fighting for the right things. And it is, in fact, fighting against the very things I've been talking about. I'm going to leave you with this. I've heard Israelis frequently, and many, many Jews in the diaspora opine that, well, these civil liberties and freedoms and pluralism and the settlements and all of these things, these are not the most important issue because Israel faces grave existential dangers. And only when we solve Israel's grave existential dangers can we get to those other issues, as important as they may be. I hear this all the time. And I had a chance a couple years ago in Israel to meet in a very small group of maybe 6 of us with a very, very high-ranking Israeli soldier, a general. And I asked if he agreed with that. Because after all, he's a general in the IDF. And I wanted to know. This is what everybody tells me. A lot of people tell me. Do you agree with that? And I will never forget what he said. He said, if Israel can't have those values and ethics and morals and respect the Jewish teachings I hold dear, then I'm not going to die for her. He went on to say, what's the point of me sending people into battle to die for a country that has no values? There is no point. And it stuck with me. Because here's a guy who really does put his line and the lives of the people who serve with him on the line day in and day out. And he believes that we should be fighting for these issues. And I intend to finally join his fight. Amen.